Let's bring the meeting of the California Housing Financing Agency to order. Call for a roll call.
Mr. Schaefer for Mr. Chung.
Present.
Ms. Gallagher. Dr. Imbasiani.
Here.
Mr. Hunter.
Here.
Mr. Agawa for Mr. Metcalf.
Present.
Mr. Prince. Mr. Williams for Ms. Podesta.
Here.
Ms. Sotelo. Here. Ms. Boatman Patterson. Here. Mr. Gunning.
Here.
Mr. Prince.
Here.
We have a quorum. We have a quorum.
All right, thanks, Pam. Moving on to item number 2, approval of the minutes from the July 13th Board of Directors meeting. Have any comments on the minutes?
Well, there were a few typos, so can I correct some of those?
By all means.
So on line 23, it has an extra word "a" in front of needed. It should be with needed, replaced with needed director of enterprise risk instead of needed a director. And then on line 35, it's MHSA funds, not NHSA funds. And on the second page, no, those are the only two that I have, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Imbasiani, do you have a comment? Okay. Any other comments from the board members?
Move approval of the minutes.
Been a motion, is there a second? Second. Second. Call the roll.
Mr. Schaefer.
Aye.
Ms. Gallagher.
Aye.
Dr. Imbasiani.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Agawa.
I was not at the July meeting, so I'll be abstaining.
Mr. Prince. Mr. Williams.
Abstain. I wasn't here for the last board meeting.
Ms. Sotelo. Yes. Mr. Gunning.
Yes.
The minutes don't have enough for approval.
Okay, we'll carry those over to the next board meeting in November. All right, the part I look forward to, the executive director comments. Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and if you all bear with me, it's been a while since our last meeting, and so I have a few things to report out on. Yesterday, I did attend California Forward's 1 Million Home Challenge, Developing Solutions for Meeting California's Housing Needs. This was part 2. The purpose of the group is to identify a set of actionable ideas within the summit's all of the above framework that can increase housing supply, reduce cost, and make substantial impact on with a coalition to support those efforts. The last time this group met was in April, and the intent is to have this framework finalized in Sacramento at the 2016 California Economic Summit scheduled for December 13th and 14th. The work of this group is happening simultaneously to the good work that our sister agency, the Department of Housing and Community Development, is doing related to the statewide housing plan, and will help frame the housing policy conversation as we head into the next legislative session. Regarding legislation, CalHFA had 3 legislative proposals, one dealing with the mortgage insurance fund director and replacing that with the director of mortgage enterprise risk, the second dealing with our down payment assistance or subordinate debt financing programs and making those programs more easy to use. 2 of those pieces of legislation, those 2 pieces of legislation have been signed and gone gone to the governor and been signed. The last piece of legislation, which was AB 723, which dealt with modifying our multifamily programs, modernizing those programs and aligning our occupancy standards and rent calculations with some of the other state housing programs, has been signed by the legislature and forwarded to the governor, and so we await positive results on that piece of legislation. That legislation will allow more flexibility in our multifamily lending programs. You all will be receiving a survey about board schedules for the next coming year and your availability. Tony will give some more reports out, but some of the feedback we have received from our lender partners and our developers is that they would like us to perhaps meet more often to deal with the additional projects that may be coming online. And I just looked over and I saw the treasurer, so welcome, Mr. Treasurer. Fourth, there are a series of conferences that will be headed during this fall. Fall is the housing conference. That's when we all have our housing conferences. Multifamily will be getting out and marketing our multifamily lending programs at those fall conferences. Fifth, the HUD-OIG dispute with HUD last year. There was a HUD letter clarifying the use of tiered pricing and FHA-insured loans to fund down payment, and all of the housing finance agencies thought the issue had been resolved. On July 26th, the HUD Office of Inspector General, the Inspector General Dave Montoya, sent a letter to Representative of Congress Jeb Hensarling, who chairs the Housing Committee on Financial Services. The HUD-OIG raised concerns about HUD's response to HUD-OIG audits of a funding arrangement for down payment assistance to Federal Housing Administration borrowers. The Inspector General believes this funding arrangement violates the National Housing Act, and the IG took this action after having this action, the HUD Deputy Secretary Nancy Coletti, who is in charge with resolving disputes between HUD and the HUD-OIG, actually had sent a letter, and so we thought it had all was resolved then, and that the issue had been settled last May in favor of HUD's view that FHA down payment programs are not inconsistent with its guidelines and underlying federal housing law. And accordingly, that is HUD's official position. Based upon CalHFA's understanding and information, CalHFA agreed with HUD's official position and interpretation. At this point, it is unclear what HUD's next steps will be or whether there will be any congressional action concerning this matter. But we know that we're kind of running out of time because they would have a limited time to probably meet on this. Please be advised that the HUD-OIG is seeking information from CalHFA that it believes may be relevant in this matter. And on the advice of counsel, we are limiting our communication on this subject, and CalHFA will cooperate fully with the Inspector General, as well as any inquiries we receive from members of Congress. CalHFA and its sister HFAs have a strong track record of responsible lending to lower income families and resulting sustainable homeownership outcomes, often made possible with our down payment assistance. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Tia. Any comments from the board? Well, you pointed out, Tia, but we'd also like to welcome. Let's move on in the agenda to agenda item 4. Tony?
Mr. Chair, before we move on, can we understand the implications of the OIG audit and what that would potentially do to the down payment assistance program?
I think it's unclear at this time, but it is a national issue. The overwhelming majority of housing finance agencies offer down payment assistance with its first-time homebuyer programs. It is a critical key component to our first-time homebuyer programs. In fact, that's pretty much part of our mission and why we were created, is to be able to offer that type of assistance. It's what distinguishes us from the commercial market. And so it's unclear. And so we'll be working with the housing finance agencies and with members of Congress to make sure that they understand our programs and understand why we believe they are consistent with the HUD's guidelines, which is also, by the way, HUD's position, that we are working within their framework and within their guidelines.
So we'll continue to roll out our programs and continue to support that effort.
Yes, and we, as always, we will continue to do our due diligence, continue that we're making sure that we are open and transparent with our borrowers and making sure that they know what our products look like and that our products are consistent with the law.
Any other questions from board members? All right, Tori, you're up. Item number 4, update and discussion regarding multifamily lending programs. James?
Good morning, Board. Thank you for having me. I know we've been doing this fairly frequently, but I want to continue to update you on the progress that we're making on the multifamily lending programs that we have. There are a couple new products that we're looking at, or new proposals that I wanted to make sure that the Board understands, and if they have any questions, we can discuss them. But first, I want to talk about our production and our pipeline and how our production is picking up on the lending side. And after each of these sections, if there's any questions, please jump in at any time with any questions that there may be. So far this year, as we're just getting started with this fiscal year, our production doesn't look that great. We have closed 4 deals. 2 of them are conduit issuances, the 2 largest ones. But it has only been 2.5 months.
John, can you hang on 1 sec?
Yeah.
And the board members, you can see it over here, can't you?
We
You guys
can't
have
see
the
it,
printout?
so it's this is your presentation? Okay, okay.
Yeah. So I apologize. We're on page 3. I don't apologize to you guys.
Go ahead, Tony.
So far we've done, as I said, 4 loans, 431 units, almost all of them with as conduit issuance. The one first lien loan that we have closed is in our small loan program. The report is in the back of the board package. It is a small loan in Berkeley, California, that we're very proud of and that we are very excited to get closed. And we think that is another feather in our multifamily lending cap. So we will continue to update. Let's look at the pipeline now. Next page. The next page shows a much rosier picture of what is coming down the pipe. We have at least 11 loans that are ready to close. One of them may be closing today or tomorrow. Another one of our FFB loans, we'll get into that in a little bit. But our goal for the year was to do $190 million in first lien lending and $300 million in conduit. And this pipeline takes us generally through about the end of the year, early next year, a calendar year. So we're well on pace to meet that with what we have in our pipeline. Moving on to the next page, these are the programs that we have currently available on our multifamily lending side. These are the programs that we're going to really be marketing out at the fall conferences that Tia was discussing. The first 3 programs, let me just step back. Our main competitive advantage right now is this federal financing bank program with HUD risk share that we have that offers very low rates, long terms, and our permanent financing is not going to be beat out in the marketplace. So we've really designed programs that accentuate that advantage. We have our acquisition rehabilitation loan program, which we've always had. We've had our we have now a permanent loan program, which is what a few of the loans that are closing soon are going to be using. And we've also developed a permanent takeout loan program, which allows us to partner with other construction lenders to use us just as a permanent lender and then provide the construction loan. And we have a few of those in the pipeline as well. The other loan program that we're excited about is our small loan program, just for loans $3.5 million or less in certain areas, $2.5 million in other areas. And then our conduit issuance program, which has really picked up and is really going to be bolstered if the governor signs our legislation, which will align our occupancy standards with TCAC and SIDLAC standards, as well as with age seating programs. So that we believe that will really eliminate one of the obstacles to developers using our conduit issuance program. A little more information on our HUD Risk Share Federal Financing Bank loan program that we have. It's a permanent loan program only. We did close our first loan in August. It wasn't counted on the close report because it was a permanent takeout loan, which we counted last year because the construction loan was closed last year. But we're very excited to get that done. As we work through this, we're gaining a better understanding of the process. It is a federal program with 2 federal agencies involved, so there is a decent amount of rules and regulations on that. I won't use the B word, but we are working through that, and we're learning more every deal we close. That's another one we're closing. We're closing a loan today, and we'll close the funding with the Federal Financing Bank in the next couple weeks. Today or tomorrow, I shouldn't say today, but very shortly. And most of the pipeline that we have is using the FFB as a permanent funding source. The rest are using our small loan program, which was used agency subsidy funds or agency HAP funds. And more construction lenders are interested in working with us on the permanent takeout program. We have, I think, three or four different construction lenders that we already have in our pipeline that we're working with. So that's very exciting to us. And they're small and large mix, some regional, some national, which is really we want to get a good mix to have everyone involved. Right now I want to talk about a couple, well, let me stop. Are there any questions about what we've talked about so far before we get into, this is sort of the meat of the presentation here. So.
Turn your mic on, Eileen. There's on the side there.
Sorry. You mentioned the pending legislation that would conform the targeting with SIDLAC. Can you just...
Sure. Well, currently, Cal HFA has statutory requirements that require us to set rents at by the number of people expected to live in each bedroom. So ours currently assumes that for a studio apartment, 1 person lives there. For a 1-bedroom, we have 2 people living there. For a 2-bedroom, 3, and so on. So the number of bedrooms plus 1 person is what our rents are set at. Most other state programs, outside of a few designated ones, housing authorities and Cal HFA being specific examples, have to use 1.5 people per bedroom. So for large bedroom sizes, our rents are lower than what TCAC or SIDLAC require, and so borrowers use other programs rather than Cal HFA. They have oftentimes for programs like that. But once we'll be all aligned, we won't have any issues, and we hope that everyone in the state will be on the same system. So what I want to talk about now is a new program that Jim and I have been working on with a couple developers, as well as a partner bank that are all very interested in making solving the problem of this missing middle that we hear about a lot in housing. It's those that make too much money to qualify for tax credit units, but still can't afford market rate rents in their area. This is a large problem, especially in the Bay Area, but in areas throughout the state. It also has come up with the legislature has asked us to solve this problem. We have committed to finding solutions to this problem, and we think we're getting closer and closer. How we've decided to attack this is try to take existing market rate developments and find developers that are willing to restrict some percentage of those units at 50 to 80% AMI, and a lot of them are willing to want to restrict 100% at 80 AMI and maybe 20 at 50, and we're really getting that 60 to 80 AMI population more affordable housing. The obstacles that we keep running into are the timing of our loan closings. and the affordability restrictions that we have currently under our loan programs. But discussions with lenders and developers, we have been positive, we have been making progress. So the next page has a little diagram of the direction that we're moving that we think could work. So to solve the timing issues, we're going to have to bring in another lender that can provide a loan quickly to a developer that wants to purchase a market rate property. Usually on market rate transactions, the seller has a 45 to 60-day escrow period, so the loan has to be funded pretty quickly. With our HUD risk share program, we just, in our general due diligence process, we cannot meet that timeline. We made that pretty clear. What we can do, however, is, what we're proposing to do, is to provide a small subordinate loan to the project, probably an average, depending on the size of the project, averaging around $500,000, as a sort of a good faith deposit that we're interested in this property. It would be secured by the property. It would be, and along with that would be a regulatory agreement restricting units down to the levels that we ultimately need them to get to, whether it be 20% at 50% of AMI, 100% at 80 AMI, however we need to get there. The lending partner would then provide the large first loan on a very short-term basis until we're ready to do the permanent takeout. After purchase, we would commence with full underwriting of the permanent loan. We would do our full due diligence, our full HUD risk share underwriting, and make sure that the loan meets all of our full standards. The property at the time would review all of the tenant incomes and see what affordability levels they were at, and then as tenants leave, they would replace the tenants to reach the necessary affordability levels that both us and HUD would require. Once all of those affordability levels are met, once the underwriting is complete and all of the approvals are gained, we would be in the position to provide a first lien FFB permanent loan to pay off the short-term lender's loan, and we would have new affordable housing created, much of which would be for that missing middle. And the lending partner would be out of the transaction, and we would have a 40-year regulatory agreement on the property restricting units at whatever levels we need to do to meet the program requirements. I will stop here and open it up for questions.
Can you talk about what are the components of the program that are making the incentives for the owner to participate? I mean, I assume it's either reduced interest rates or longer term. Can you talk a little bit about why they would want to participate?
Yeah, for sure. I think if we look, the next page has a little talk about that. So there's two things. One is I think developers are very interested in our FFB permanent financing program. It's 40 years, it's very low rates, so they can, it's a lot easier to get deals done with that financing. The second step would be local incentives that require this, whether it's inclusionary housing or other things that are pushing developers to build this type of, or to create this type of housing. Now, in different areas, there's going to be different incentives. We think that in the Bay Area, there's a lot of incentives to make this happen, but it's also much more expensive to do this in the Bay Area. We have talked with two different developers, one who is based out of more of the LA County area, another developer who is based out of the Bay Area. Both of them think that a program like this would work for what they're trying to do, to buy up these some market rate properties and bring the affordability levels down. But of course, it's going to be on a project by project, deal by deal basis.
And then can you talk a little bit about the risk of that good faith loan, of what happens as you do your due diligence? What happens if this board chooses not to complete the transaction due to underwriting?
Yeah, we would, yeah, and I should have stated that before. I mean, the idea about that loan, and one thing, I mean, a big reason why I'm bringing this to the board is because that loan would not be brought to board. It would be under the $4 million delegated amount that the board has delegated. The permanent loan would be brought to board because it would be a larger loan. But as to the risk, we would underwrite it so that the combination of the first loan and our loan is still, we would have LTV restrictions on that. You know, a 90 or 95 combined LTV for our loan, so that we would still have some security in the property. But it would be a riskier loan than our first loan that has tax credits on it. But we think that developing this kind of housing, working with developers that are know what they're doing, that have a proven track record, is going to be important for this program. So I think some of those details need to be worked out, and that's why we bring it to you. But I think we have thought through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I find it very interesting to think about how to provide a tool to those developers who do have inclusionary zoning requirements, but could opt out by just making a payment. So this gives them the tool to actually do the inclusionary development. So I like that. I just think it's a slippery slope to put the board in a spot where the staff have made, even if it's a small good faith loan, then how are we going to be able to do our due diligence and be able to, our fiduciary responsibility? I just think it's kind of a tight thing, because we want to support staff, but at the same time, we're going to want to be able to have the right to say no to something and not have the pressure. So I think it's an interesting thing to kind of work through. I don't have really a position on it, but something to think about.
So I also want to add, Mr. Chair, if I could, that by putting this money in on the front end, and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, you're actually basically purchasing a regulatory agreement. So even though it may be a riskier loan, the consideration or what you're getting for that is a market rate unit that would not have been regulated. Now you're going to have regulated units. So even if they don't go forward with the permanent financing, takeout financing, you have purchased a covenant and have now restricted units. So it's a riskier loan from the finance perspective, but you are actually purchasing something and getting regulated units. And I don't know if that was clear.
Yeah, no, that is, but I'm thinking about the risk of what happens if this board says no to the full loan closing, and see what I'm saying? Is that then we do have a small loan that staff have made, and that then we are going against staff if we say, no, we don't like the underwriting. And that to me is just it's a hypothetical that hopefully would never come to be, that we would actually disagree. You would do a lot of due diligence before you would make a good faith loan. But it is just, I think it's a slippery slope of a sort.
Yeah, and I understand that. And maybe good faith deposit was a little further than what we are thinking of. It's a deposit that we're interested in the loan. We've communicated clearly that these permanent loans have to come to our board, has to be approved by our board. And we won't have completed our due diligence before making that initial loan anyway. We need HUD approval, we need board approval, and we need to be comfortable that this permanent loan is going to work out once we get through all the due diligence as well. So,
but it's still an extension of the good faith of the board to purchase the property, though, correct?
Well, I think you could structure it as a repayable loan, a subordinate, short-term loan that
idea is
gets
it would be
repaid if
repaid.
you don't proceed to permanent loan closing, right? So it doesn't have to be completely at risk, because what would happen, I guess I don't understand the correlation between the loan and the covenants, because $500,000 is not enough to buy long-term covenants on anything, unfortunately. So, I think that if you do want to do the short-term loan, to be able to incentivize developers to move forward towards permanent loan closing and have those units restricted for a longer period of time, that's the right way to go. But should the board decide not to provide the permanent loan, then that loan can be repaid, the covenants could be released, and they would refinance the debt to be able to repay our loan.
I think from a financial protection as well, we would at least need to have the ability to wipe off those covenants. If we were concerned about the financial, I think these are discussions that we will have further as we get into a real loan, because clearly if the covenants are on there, it in many cases it's going to reduce the financial viability of the project.
I think for me the questions are threefold. One is really, what are we trying to achieve? What is the anticipated result of this program? The other is, if we're looking at an existing product or an existing development where people are already living there, then the underwriting risk of turnover is one that you really have to analyze carefully. And maybe people are already living there in the market rate condition, but they're paying 50% of their income, and so we could reset and readjust and make them pay 30% of their income, and that's a good policy result. But we have to understand that and understand the financial implication of doing that. And then for me, I love the idea of helping this missing middle. I think the workforce housing, initiatives that we've been trying to do is exactly where we need to end up. I think that it helps in markets all over the state. So I'm very excited about it. I just would maybe recommend that we maybe have a little bit more, and I appreciate you guys reaching out to developers as well as owners out there and lenders to kind of creatively think about this. But I think we need a little bit more of a working session to iron out some of the stuff, because if we have $5 million for this program, I'm not sure how much is being allocated for the program.
We haven't, we're creating the program, that's why we're here talking to you guys, so you
Right.
guys can be asking us these questions.
Right, so if we have a certain amount of money, maybe we can partner with CDFIs whose mission it is to actually do this, not necessarily a typical lender, but a CDFI.
And
maybe we
the main lender we're
can-
talking to is a nonprofit lender, so.
Okay, there, okay.
it's-
So, we create
I
a
think-
fund and kind of leverage our dollars.
I think that the main driver behind this is not your typical for-profit banks or for-profit developers. It is going to be people who are slightly more mission-based or have a more mission focus in mind. But ultimately, we need to create a financial model that's viable, that's actually going to work. And I think that's what we're trying to get at here.
But we are not talking about new construction units?
At this point, no, we're not talking about
We're
new
only
construction.
talking about
We're talking about
units that exist in the marketplace that are not affordable.
One thing that we've heard about, and this is maybe a little more,
NOAA's naturally occurring affordability and
Naturally.
anti-displacement measures.
there's that. But also, along those lines, it's in many places around the state, it's a lot easier to, and cheaper in many cases, to construct market rate housing than it is affordable housing. So, and it's also cheaper to rehab housing than it is to construct new housing. So if we can rehab market rate housing, or to make it affordable, it's going to be cheaper maybe in the long run overall for both market and affordable housing development to make that happen. So that's really what we've been focused on. And it's also going to be a lot quicker.
So the policy objective is to, we've heard from various, especially in our high cost, that there are naturally occurring affordable units that we're losing, and that they would like us to step up and provide policies that would get to anti-displacement measures. And so this coming to the board and having this discussion is setting the foundation as we go forward to create the program. That's the purpose of this conversation, was to get input from you all, to get questions so that we can continue with our due diligence.
Question, what's the typical time now between our, in our underwriting and due diligence process to close?
It's 4 to 6 months. I mean, depending on the deal, depending on the issues with it. And some of that is added on by HUD, some of it is our process. So, I mean, there's a lot of little things that go on here. But back to I think Preston has, we don't want to put the board in a position where they have their hands tied either. We want this to be a real process. And so we're going to be very careful about that as we have been in discussions, we will continue to be in discussions with others.
And I think that it is an issue in all different markets. So where Fresno or the Valley is not a high-cost area, but we still have a really hard time serving people between 60 and 120%. So it's kind of a different reason, maybe, but than what's happening in the Bay Area or high-cost areas. So I think it's a great idea to be. So I totally agree. Looking at that market is an interesting and right thing to do. So I want to make sure I'm supportive of the idea. I just want to make sure we're not boxed into a situation.
Of course, we appreciate it. Thank you. All right. We'll move on to the next slide, page 10. I just want to give a brief update on the No Place Like Home initiative. I think, I'm not sure if T mentioned this yet, but yesterday the the financing vehicle for the No Place Like Home initiative was signed by the governor. So there's still some work to do there, but HCD has really taken the lead in developing and will administer the bond program. And this is a replacement of our old MHSA housing program to some extent. What Cal HFA is doing is, we are supporting HCD in their development. We're providing the lessons that we've learned over the last 8 years from our MHSA housing program. We also are continuing to administer the special needs housing program to serve this population until HCD is ready to fully roll out and fund their new program. And currently, we have received $46 million from 3 counties, Los Angeles, San Diego, and Lassen. 2 of those much larger than one other. I won't let you guys figure out which one has a smaller amount. But we have 12 more counties that we expect to participate in the coming months. So that program is up and running. We have, I think if you saw the pipeline report, there are a decent amount of loans that we expect to come in the next several months, mostly out of LA and San Diego counties. They're really moving forward with that. And in the future, I will direct you to Mr. Igawa or Mr. Metcalf, whoever's sitting in that chair for questions about the No Place Like Home initiative. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about, and this is setting up for item number 5, which is a resolution that we have presented to the board for their discussion and approval. Is Cal HFA has, at the multifamily side, we would really like to move forward in better serving veterans and helping with serve the 1.8 million veterans that live in California. A substantial amount of those live in rural counties, and rural counties, that was maybe the more liberal interpretation of what's a rural county, but 15%, 300,000 veterans. I think a lot of the news reports that you've seen out there have focused on the way too large percentage of homeless veterans in the state. The veterans have, I saw a study that said 125% higher rate of homelessness than the overall population in California. And so we think it's overdue for us to take a step forward and start focusing on that population a little more. We also know that across the state, HUD-VASH vouchers, which are for veterans, it's a rental assistance program for veterans. They're not being fully utilized. Part of that is because we think the financing tools aren't always there for the affordable housing to tie to VASH vouchers. However, the VHHP program, which HCD administers in conjunction with CalVets and Cal HFA, is oversubscribed and is working and running and is getting loans out the door. But not all the veterans are being served by this program. The 2 main focuses that we think Cal HFA can help with are rural communities and low and moderate income families and individuals. Really those that are not extremely low income, not always homeless or at risk of homeless, but sort of the next tier up that need affordable housing. So we have 2 goals. We think we have the resources. The 2 goals are to provide the tools to those that are already creating housing for veterans. There are several developers out there that want to serve this population. They're trying to serve this population, but the tools aren't always there. But we also want to incentivize developers of general affordable housing to better serve veterans as well. So we have 2 focuses there. Our current programs actually, we think, can serve these populations pretty well. Our small loan program is really designed to serve smaller rural projects. We have had some discussions with developers of veterans projects who were very excited to hear about our small loan program. I think it could tie very well to some projects you're developing in different places. A good example of that is Shasta Lake Veterans Village, which is a project that a developer was, working and had fits and starts about getting the financing together. We met with them, told them about our program. They're very excited, and now we're moving forward with that project through our small loan program. It does have VHHP on it, and it's restricted to veterans, and we think that the program we have will help serve that project. And then our FFB permanent loan financing for larger projects is great terms and rates. And then we have subsidy funds available for projects that show a need for that. With the FFB and our subsidy funds, we were able to work to help the Newport Veterans Housing Project. It's a small project in Newport Beach that has VASH vouchers that was having difficulty with their financing, and but we've taken it and we're well on the way to closing that loan as well. And so our current programs, with a little focus from staff on veterans, is having a positive impact.
Excuse me, Tony?
Yes.
Can you explain, is this an outgrowth of the effort with Department of Veterans and HCD?
That's the
Is that what this
VHHP
is?
program, I'm sorry. So that's the Veterans Housing and Homelessness Prevention Program. So
Right,
VHHP,
Prop
that's,
41?
yeah,
one,
that's,
okay.
yes.
What?
I guess I can, but that is, what we're trying to do is we're trying to supplement that program. With a complement. Complement, I'm sorry, supplement.
So there are still other efforts, this is what we're doing.
This is what CalHFA
as a
is doing.
result of- okay.
We are involved with the VHHP steering committee and supporting them with that, but we're not involved in administering the program. So what we're trying to do is take the tools that we have and complement that program and serve the populations that VHHP may not be designed to serve as well. And
So from a policy perspective, VHHP has really been targeted at our extremely low income, chronically homeless and homeless vets, so our most vulnerable population. And because that is just a limited resource, we want to see that money targeted there. But what we found was that there were some underserved communities or veterans of higher and low income, still low income, that weren't being served. And so what we did with our partners is to say, how can we come in and complement what was already going on so that we can serve a broader range of our veterans community? We saw probably 8 pieces of legislation trying to change the VHHP program to do more than what it could. And so by these efforts and us coming in and complementing that program, we are then able to let that program continue to direct its resources toward our most vulnerable veterans and not have to necessarily change that program.
I would also like to compliment the VHHP program and what it's accomplished. So we want to complement it and complement it.
And send a shout out to the CalVet staff who has worked diligently, that it usually sits on our board, it's sitting out in the audience.
We'd be happy to accept the supplementary compliment.
So I think that this is another great conversation, and I'm still struggling with the comment about VASH vouchers, but because I think it's a complicated topic about why there's utilization issues, and I mean, it's just very complicated. And Tia did a great job in bringing CalVet and the housing authorities together. We just had a retreat. The Northern California Housing Authorities just had a retreat. And we talked about the phone call that was set up maybe about a year ago to talk about Prop 41 and how we have housing authorities work collaboratively on making those successful. I think a follow-up call would be great, because now it's time to, I think, to hear from the housing authorities about our utilization issues and what's happening, what's our demographics. I look at the current programs for veterans, and I'm stuck on the permanent loan financing, because what we're finding is the veteran families or households that we're serving are extremely low income, so there's not really a mortgage that we're looking for. So I think it's the first and third that are much more suitable for the demographics that we're seeing. I think that we're still seeing a huge kind of difference in the communities, whether it's individuals or families. And so, and I think you had talked about families maybe on an earlier slide or something. So I think it would be great to have that conversation. The housing authorities are serving lots of veterans. Many of us have veteran preferences on our housing choice voucher and public housing programs. And so I think it would be great to circle back. So Tia, if you could do that, I think we would really appreciate having that opportunity to have an ongoing conversation about how do we, I know I'm wearing a different hat at this time, wearing the housing authority hat, but I think it would be great to do that.
Chip?
But
On the issue of the VASH vouchers not being fully utilized, it's not only complicated, it's very multifactorial. So sometimes anecdotes can help, even though it's a small population, to shed light on a bigger problem. The city of San Diego, there are a lot of VASH vouchers available, and there are not a lot of landlords. The housing market is so tight, and rental rates in a tight market go up. So a superabundance of VASH vouchers is meeting this wall. So the City Council of San Diego, supplemented by a vote of the council, I think up to $300 to add on, a promise by the city they will tack on additional funds to entice landlords to rent to veterans. So here you are, you have vouchers, veterans in need, and the sort of impenetrable market. Just a very urban phenomenon, I'm sure, but multifactorial.
yeah, I shouldn't have been so terse about that. I agree that VASH has, but I mean, the more tools we can offer to encourage the use of that, what we can do is what we would like to.
Yeah, and I had a chip on my shoulder, so I'll take it off, so I appreciate that. Because I do think it is multifactorial, was that you used? So I think that thinking about how to do landlord incentives is a great idea. And City of Alameda just launched an initiative to do like a one-time payment of $500 to landlords who participate just in the housing choice voucher. I agree that if a high-cost area or a low vacancy area is trying to issue a voucher, somebody's trying to lease it up, whether they're a veteran or a family just off of the regular housing choice voucher program, they're going to hit the same issue. So landlord incentives makes a lot of sense. I think this is where the FFB does work, because if we're able to set aside units within market rate developments that target veterans or other homeless populations, it'd be great. So I do think in high-cost areas, it is an issue of landlord participation. It is an issue of the market conditions. There's all kinds of things going on.
And back to one of your earlier points, I mean, this program, what we're trying to do is not necessarily target the extremely low-income veterans. We think that VHHP is designed to do that. So we are trying to get at that next level of low-income veterans that need affordable housing. So I think there is a complement there. Currently, above and beyond the programs that we have, our current ideas about how we will incentivize more veterans to be housed in affordable housing, specifically in Cal HFA's properties, we have a twofold strategy. One is for projects that have units restricted to veterans or will restrict units to veterans, they're going to receive a priority in our underwriting process. We will prioritize them. We will get them through our process. As we have the two deals, we took a closer look at one of them. At first, we didn't think it penciled out, but we got it to work. We worked with the developer, and we made it work. So we will continue to do that on projects that restrict units to veterans. The second thing that we're going to do is any project that receives a subsidy loan from Cal HFA, they must provide a preference to veterans for open units. So whether it's on a waiting list or an open unit, veterans will be at the top of that list and will receive preference there. So those are the two initial steps that we're looking at taking that we think we can do pretty quickly, or very quickly, we can do right away. And if there's other program development that needs to be happening, we're going to continue to look at that and continue to focus on better serving veterans from Cal HFA's perspective.
I just have Mr. Chair, I have a quick question. So I think that's a great idea about the preference. I think it's really fantastic. I would just advise that you look at fair housing issues around that for the preference component.
We have.
Okay, good.
We did that before we rolled it out. We actually had a conference call with Regional Counsel from HUD 9, their Department of Fair Employment and Housing, and we've structured it in a way that meets all of the fair housing.
Wonderful. Congratulations. And I think that if you're able to do that, I would even share that knowledge with localities and jurisdictions, because I think that would be a really nice complement to some of their programs.
So This, as I said, sort of bleeds over into item 5, which is a resolution from the board encouraging and directing staff to continue to focus on the issue of veterans housing and to use the tools available to it to focus on that. I will...
You take up item 5, just move right into it? Is that, are we there now? Okay. Is that the request for the board?
Yes, I think, I think this sort of leads into this.
Well, is there any additional comment from the board? We've heard a lot of good questions. I guess my only comment would be,
I just, not even sure I should make this comment, but there's a little bit of a disconnect for, justifying an intervention on the basis of the high number of homeless veterans, but the intervention we're designing is not necessarily targeted at homeless veterans. That doesn't mean I'm opposed to what we're doing, it's just a little bit of disconnect between rationale and the conclusion.
I understand that. I think what we're, part of our goal here is to allow the other resources to really focus on those homeless veterans and allow us to step in, so it frees those resources up to not focus on the larger population if we can handle the population.
Thanks for that clarification.
any other comments?
Mr. Chair, are we actually discussing item 5, resolution?
We are on item 5.
Okay.
You have a comment?
Do we need a motion on the floor to approve it?
We do, unless there's no other comments on it.
I just had a quick comment, just to understand the motion. The resolution is directing staff to come up with ideas and programs and to support the efforts to develop multifamily lending policies around this. But you actually are going to come back to the board once you develop those programs?
Well, the two that we've laid out, we're prepared to completely roll out now. And this, so if this is you all supporting those efforts.
Okay, so I
If
think...
there are future ones, we will definitely, as we develop them, we will bring them back to the board.
Okay, so I think that we have to amend the resolution to convey that a little bit more specifically. Because right now, the resolution reads, item number 2 of the resolution reads that the board supports the agency efforts to develop multifamily lending policies that provide preferences to veterans and affordable multifamily rental units financed by the agency. So, are we specifically saying subordinate loans? Are we saying all programs? Are we being specific around that? Or?
Wanted to give ourselves the flexibility.
Okay, I'm just...
But right now, the only thing that we intend to move forward with is the subsidy policy, and if they were utilizing our subsidy funds, that we would require that they give a preference to veterans. Anything more than that would require additional due diligence, and anything more than that, we would bring that back to the board. And so we wanted the flexibility to be able to continue to have those conversations and look at those efforts.
So I agree with the comments that Jonathan raised, and I'm struggling with the demographics issue over it. And I have to, my father was a vet, I was not, so I feel like I'm speaking out of line, because I think we all want to support veterans throughout this whole country. It's just the right thing to do. But I think the preference policy has been debated for the last 20, 30 years, where HUD removed the requirement of preferences. It really became a local choice, so that way local boards would be able to, housing authorities particularly, could look at their wait list, their demographics in their community, and make decisions. And so I think doing a blanket veteran preference, I'm kind of curious about how does that impact, or how is that in response to the demographics of communities' wait lists and housing needs. And so I feel embarrassed to be speaking out maybe against the idea of the preference at this time. What I know other folks have done is maybe a weighted preference, meaning that, half of the available units have to be serving the preference, so that way others who are on the wait list who are trying to get into a development are served. I'll just give the numbers. So within the Fresno Housing Authority, 60,000 people on our Housing Choice Voucher wait list, 9,000 are veterans. So that means no one will be served other than veterans for the next, many, many years. And so we're struggling with that as an issue, just trying to figure out the balance of what that means within a community. And so I just think kind of making it a veteran preference blanket without kind of looking deeper into the issues is a little, I don't know the right word. Maybe not really reflective of what's happening in different communities. So I just kind of throw that out there as an issue. And I think, Jonathan, that's what you're kind of saying is, maybe I'm reading wrong into your comments about basing a veteran preference off of veteran homelessness, but I think that there are multiple populations that we're trying to serve, so.
Schaefer?
I don't pretend to be a subject matter expert on this, so I just want to weigh in the hopes of stimulating some additional conversation. But I think the facts I heard were, and I'm not taking exception to the experience that you're having in Fresno, but I think the facts I heard were that the homeless, the housing needs among the veterans population are disproportionately large in our state. That's factual, I heard that, right? So as an amateur at this, I say to myself, something's clearly not working. And if part of our job is to be part of the solution, it seems to me that we should be having this conversation about whether or not using the authority that have to create a better solution. Now, I'm also highly mindful of the idea that if we have, in your community, if we have 9,000, we have 9,000 on the waiting list that are veterans, and I think I heard 30,000 others. Was that the correct?
51,000 others, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so clearly there's a larger ecosystem that is not working. I get that, so I'm not arguing against your position. I'm simply saying that as a policy matter, it seems to me the basic facts we're hearing are that something is broken and we should be talking about how to fix it.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, so I have to say, as a possible conflict of interest, I represent the agency who's responsible to be the advocate for the 1.8 million veterans in the state. But having said that, I don't want to make any presumptions about the argument we just heard. If I could direct you to resolution number 1, as I read it, the agency's existing program shall be examined to see how they can better meet the housing needs of California's veterans. It does not set up any specific quotas or ratios with respect. I couldn't put it better, Mr. Schaefer, what you just said. I want to commend the staff parenthetically on the construction and wording of your whereases. I could not have done a better job myself. The statistics included and implied by your whereases, it's just astounding. They're breathtakingly impressive numbers. So we have a problem. I think resolution 1, as I read it, does not put all veterans at the top of the list. It would not put the 9,000 in front of the 51 in Fresno County, but it would do, and I trust the people that implement this to use the good spirit and good sense to rectify, as Mr. Schaefer just said, a problem that is out of whack. So I speak in favor of this resolution as written. I'm delighted to see that it will shed. We all know that VHHP and all the other programs, including the wraparound services, are urban-centric. That's where all the people are, that's where all the money is, and we've got the 300,000 people out there in the tools, the rural communities that are underserved, and this would go a long way to addressing that. I speak very much in favor of this, and thank you to staff.
I'm going to take that as a motion.
It
is.
It's been a motion. Eileen?
I just want to clarify, I guess, to balance the two different conversations we're having. We talk about a preference for veterans. I'm assuming the question is that an exclusive, absolute preference, or is that a preference of some kind? I mean, I think that's the nuance that you have discretion to tailor.
I'll give you an example, and it really comes down to the waiting list.
Before you do that, can I just second his motion so that way it's out there?
Okay. Thank you. It really comes down to property management and tenant wait list selection kind of processes. So if you have two folks that come for one vacant unit, and one is a veteran and the other is not, the one that is a veteran would be given the preference for the unit. And so it comes to tenant, and in dealing with the fair housing issues that Ms. Sotelo mentioned, a preference it meets fair housing, whereas requiring it be set aside for veterans becomes problematic. And that's how we were able to discuss some of those issues, is that by providing a preference, keeps it open so that if there are no veterans that come to the table, that you can keep that unit open. Whereas when you completely restrict the unit to veterans only, and then you're excluding others that could potentially be eligible for that unit, that's when it becomes problematic. So that's why we've structured the resolution as we have to give us, to be able to meet those kind of guidelines.
Mr. Chairman.
Second on that.
No.
But Mr. Chairman, a colleague from CalVets is asked to speak about this.
We'd like to recognize Teresa Gunn, please.
Thank you. I only came up because I know a lot of the statistics that were given here were really based off of some of the homeless statistics, but what didn't get pulled into this conversation is that there are 1.8 million veterans in the state. And if you study the AHAR reports and any of the veteran-specific reports, what you'll see is through every demographic, veterans are at least 1.5 times more likely to lose their housing, be susceptible to not being able to get housing, and it goes up from there. 1.5 is the best ratio. Most of them are at 3 to 4 times more likely than their civilian counterpart or non-veteran counterpart at running risk of becoming homelessness. And so that's partly why CalVet is really excited about this opportunity to help put some preference towards the low to moderate income individuals, help put them on stable ground and prevent them from becoming homeless and a part of the population that then VHHP is going to be helping serve. In addition to that, that most people do not understand is that many of our veterans are coming back with serious disabilities, a variety of them. And many of them will not be able to go back to work, and we think, great, well, they've got a disability income. Their disability income at 100% disability keeps them in many communities at or below the 80% AMI. And so that's just another kind of fact to help with this idea of giving that preference in those communities where you can attract veterans into them to assist in that. So thank you for letting me speak.
Teresa. Any additional comment? Good, seeing there's a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Mr. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. Gallagher?
Aye.
Dr. Imbasciani?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Igawa?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Sotelo?
Aye.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
The motion passes. The resolution 1614 is approved.
Great, thanks, Tony. Aren't you still up here for this one? Moving along to agenda item number 6, discussion and recommendation possible action regarding a final loan commitment for Vista Hidden Valley. Ron.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess since we're on video and for the record, I'm Jim Morgan, Housing Finance Chief for Multifamily Programs. And this is Ruth Vakili, the Housing Finance Officer for this project. So We are actually very, very excited to bring you a new project, adding units to the CalHFA affordable housing portfolio, and the fact that it is one of our first 9% tax credit deals that we've done since 1999, so in the last 17 years. So it's a good day at CalHFA. So with that, Ruth Keeley.
Morning. Hidden Valley is a 50-unit affordable senior housing project located in Vista. The location is very convenient to all the services that are needed, and shopping and the senior center as well. There are 42 one-bedroom units and 8 two-bedroom units on a 4.2-acre site, so the density is low. There are 19 residential buildings and 1 single-story community building. The site is sloped in some areas, which allows for all of the units to be accessed at grade. These are not two-story buildings. Some of the units have adjacent carports. All of the units have their own private patio, and the buildings themselves are in very good shape. The community building is single-story, and it contains the offices and meeting spaces for services and gatherings. The property was built in 1996 and has been very well maintained. But at this point, it requires substantial rehab to improve the energy efficiency of the buildings and the useful life. As you can see in these pictures, this is a unit that was recently turned over for a new tenant. Look very nice because they've been well maintained, but it's time to upgrade and to give the property a facelift and bring in a fair amount of energy savings of over 20% and water efficiency. That budget is $2.5 million or $51,300 a unit. And the exterior repairs will consist of installing water efficient landscaping and irrigation, correcting site drainage, installing LED lighting and PV solar systems, repairing and painting exteriors, replacing all windows and patio doors, and repairing the asphalt paving. In addition, there will be 13 fully accessible units, which is 25% of the project. Buildings will have new attic insulation, will receive HVA systems, energy efficient countertops and cabinets, and unit painting and flooring. Work will be completed on a daily basis so that tenants will only have to be out of their unit during normal business hours. Or make their own arrangements.
Yeah.
Tony was very tall. Okay, is this better? Thanks. Okay. Want me to repeat the whole thing? Okay. The tenants would be out of their units for just one day. In the ADA units, there are more retrofit requirements, and some of the entryways will need to be widened, so these tenants will be out for 2 days while that work is being completed. These tenants in the ADA units will be relocated to a nearby hotel, and all their living and moving expenses will be paid for. The borrower will be SFC VHB LP, and the managing general partner will be Step Forward Communities. The administrative general partner is TCD Development Services, LLC. Triton Community Development is a developer, and who the sole principal of Triton has completed 43 affordable housing projects and has 5 projects currently in various development stages. Triton recently completed a project financed by CalHFA, which is a family project in Barstow, and that project is converting to permanent tomorrow, in fact. In addition, we've done 3 other projects, NIBP projects, with Bill Rice and his team. His team consists of the Musser Architects as the architect and Sun Country Builders, who are very experienced in development of rehab projects, and has been the same team utilized on several of Triton's projects. The property manager for the project there's a change from the board report. Triton has decided to retain the existing property manager on site, which is Hyder Property and Company. They've been in business for over 40 years and have extensive management experience in affordable housing. They manage over 88 properties in California, 8 of which are currently in CalHFA's portfolio. They were requesting an acquisition rehab taxable loan of $5,730,000. The term is for 12 months at an underwriting rate of 2.75%, which is currently about a 20 basis point cushion. The permanent loan is $1,500,000 for a term of 40 years at an underwriting rate of 3.9%, which gives a 42 basis point cushion on the interest rate. CalHFA loan will be recorded against fee and leasehold interest in the project. The Community Development Corporation of the City of Vista is the landowner. There will be a long-term land lease, and the City of Vista is also extending an existing loan of $4,495,000. The total term of both the loan and the ground lease will be 55 years. The city currently restricts the property to age 62 and above, with incomes at 50% or below. The city will continue to restrict the age requirement of 50 to 62 and will require an additional 5 units to be restricted to 30% AMI. There will be tax credits involved in the property, and the tax credit restrictions will bring the property restrictions down to 30, 45, and 50% AMI. CalHFA will restrict 20% of the units at 50%. And in addition, 51% of the units will also be restricted to 120% AMI as required by earned surplus funds. I wanted to point out that on item 47, page 5, the involvement of the city by virtue of extending their loan and extending the ground lease, the city requested that a payment of $200,000 be made in order to improve and benefit the senior center, which is highly used by the property residents. This further information I received after the board report was presented and more clarifies that item 47. So in summary, the project affordability will be greatly deepened and extended by virtue of the new tax credits and restructuring of the city loan and ground lease and CalHFA financing. And now 37% of the units will be restricted to 45% AMI or below. And the rents that will be charged are 30 to 53% of market rents for the area, which is a real improvement. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
Just confused by the affordability. It looks like the city has a level, we have a level. Do you just, I mean, those are the most restrictive to the term of each loan?
Well, each source has a somewhat different affordability restrictions, and the most restrictive will be the tax credit restrictions, and CalHFA's restrictions fall within that, as well as the city's. And the city is actually requesting deeper affordability.
So I have a couple of questions. Thank you very much, Ruth. It was a good report. And I love the new format. Boxes are very clear, items are very clear, so I really appreciate that. A couple of things. One is, I guess, this $200,000 donation to the city, it's being structured as a lease payment, a capitalized lease payment. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, it is not construed as a capitalized lease payment. The lease payment is $1,000 a year with no capitalization. This is in consideration of the extension of the loan and the ground lease.
So it is a fee that will be put into the project cost?
Yes.
And classified as? what? A
It's
fee?
classified as, in the budget, we classified as a capitalized payment.
So I think that leads to my other question. Under acquisition costs of your budget, you've got the lesser of land costs or appraised value at $400,000, and then you've got existing improvements value of $6.7 million. So that's clearly a use of $7.1 million. What is the source of that?
What is the source of the funds?
Of that, yeah, what is the source to offset that use?
The source, one of the sources is the value of the city land lease, and the value was derived by an appraisal. The city land lease is added as a source, and then the $400,000 payment is a use, and the existing improvements were valued at $6.7 million.
Right, so is that $6.7 million coming out as cash out or equity to the borrower?
For the seller, what that involves is 6.7 minus the 4.495 city loan, minus accrued interest, and minus the taxes that are due on the property, nets the seller, according to my calculation, at about $550,000 cash out.
Okay, so, this, again, programmatically and from a policy standpoint, I keep saying the same thing over and over with these reports. It's not a problem to pull out cash from properties. We want to incentivize developers to utilize their assets, particularly nonprofit organizations. We want to be able to have them, demonstrate and use their equity and their equity growth. We've got to highlight that in the board report somewhere.
Just to be clear, this is a sale. This is not a refinance. This is an A to B transaction.
So they're not related entities?
No.
Okay, so they're not related entities at all?
That's right.
Not a cash?
This is just net proceeds to the seller.
The seller.
Yeah.
So the assumption of the loan from the city of Vista, they're allowing the assumption of the $4.4 million loan to a brand-new entity, a new borrower?
Yes.
As well as the assignment of the lease, and that in exchange for a $200,000 payment?
Yes.
A capitalized lease payment?
And the approval has already gone before council.
Okay.
Board member, does that answer your question?
It does, but it's not reflected in the board memo.
In the staff report?
In the staff report. So that does answer my question. I appreciate it.
Jim, I had one question. Under the project weaknesses, how come we don't include Section 8 in calculation? I guess there's some tenants on Section 8 but not counted in the cash flow analysis.
The reason for that is that this is not project-based, it's tenant-based. And so while there's more cash flow than we can account for, we don't use it for the underwriting purposes to be more conservative. But one thing to note, though, is that the developer did capitalize in the budget a reserve of $120,000 to take care of potential losses.
Any more questions from the board?
Just one last on the affordability. So the affordability term is being extended beyond 2034 by how many years?
By 21 years,
21
for a total
years.
of 55 years.
Okay, so for our $1.5 million, we're getting an additional 21 years of affordability.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move approval of the.
I'll second. Been a motion and a second. Volk?
Mr. Schaefer?
While I have no present or past economic interest, as an abundance of caution, since I was an advisor to the city of Vista, which is one of the parties in interest here, I'll abstain.
Ms. Gallagher? Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Dr. Imbasciani?
Aye.
Mr. Agawa?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Sotelo?
Aye.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Resolution 1615 is approved.
Okay, we've moved to the portion of the agenda that it's the normal reports, but I'd like to see if there's any public comment at this time from anyone in the public who wants to comment. Being none, is there any other issues or questions from board members?
I just one comment is it was really nice to see the report about the dramatic reduction in loans that are delinquent. That our continued progress on that front is really commendable. And it was also particularly to note how that has been improved as a result of the Keeping Your Home program. Those funds have been invested well and are benefiting Californians throughout the state.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can make one announcement that I probably should have made during my executive director comments.
Just one moment here.
I want to echo those comments because it's dramatically an improvement considering where we were, Jonathan, and I made the same note myself. In fact, mine was, this is awesome. So kudos to the staff on that. I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you may be aware, our Director of Homeownership, Ken Peeble, retired as of August 31st of this year. And so as an interim measure, Timothy Sue, who is our Director of Finance, who is has helped us get through and weather the storm, is stepping in, taking on the dual role as the Director of Finance and the interim Director of Homeownership. And so we have an interim plan as we seek to fill that position, but I wanted to let the board know that that's how we were covering the Director of Homeownership position at this time.
You think he's capable of handling that?
Oh, I think so.
Abundantly capable. Great.
I'm sorry, I hate to be interrupting that. I know a number of us are going to be joining you at the national conference, and so while I've looked at the agenda and I've kind of identified what I think are going to be interesting things to attend, I think it'd be really good for you to also highlight to us prior to going to the conference what you think we should be going to, what you want us paying attention to. So.
Okay, I'll make sure I send out an email, and just so that you all know, I think there are 4 board members. Preston, a representative from the California Department of Veterans Affairs. Wasn't there another? Tina is attending, so maybe it's 3 board members. No, and Stephen Russell. So those 3 board members will be attending, and I'll make sure I get you all out an email to know what the hot topic issues.
And I saw that there are things that are open only to staff and commissioners, and so want to make sure that you tell us which ones you really want us to attend, or whether there are other sessions you're okay if we go off and listen in on. So that's what I'm really looking for, is like, what do you...
You're there for board training, you should be getting your board training, mister.
Yeah, but there are concurrent sessions, so I'd like to know,
Okay.
like, you know...
Fair enough.
That's what I'm saying.
From past experience, they won't let you in the room if you ain't on staff. I've tried, so.
Yeah, I want to go to the executive director only lunch.
No, you can't get in that. I tried that too.
I'm going to
Trust
try
me.
anyway. We'll see what happens.
They kick you out.
Good. No other comments?
I think we're adjourned. Thank you. That was sweet.